Hi, I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz, and this is the first day from the Fundraising School. According to our friends at the Chronicle of Philanthropy, they publish the Philanthropy 400 every year, the top destinations of charitable dollars. And 4 of the top 10 destinations, including number 1 overall, are these so-called commercial donor-advised funds. We've had donor-advised funds in community foundations dating back to the 1930s, but especially in the last couple of decades, we've seen this influx of donations into donor-advised funds managed by private wealth management companies. And so this is a huge, white-hot trend in philanthropy. In fact, as we teach our courses at the Fundraising School, this comes up quite a bit from our participants. And here to help us understand how to fundraise from these so-called commercial donor-advised funds is Dr. Patrick Rooney. Patrick is the Executive Associate Dean of the Indiana University Lilly Family School of Philanthropy. And he has written on this topic, has spoken on this topic, and is bringing information, practical information for fundraisers today. And Patrick, these commercial donor advised funds, when we teach at the Fundraising School, we hear words like secret, black box, treacherous. Like fundraisers are kind of leery, like Darth Vader's around the corner. What do we need to know about these so-called commercial DAFs?
Yeah, so Bill, I think one of the things that's fascinating is professional fundraisers, I think, are the most anxious about DAFs of everybody you talk to. And I think it's in part because a donor can be as anonymous as they want to be, or they can take as much credit as they want to be, they can be as public about these gifts as they want to be. And honestly, I think that's one of the reasons that the asset value in DAF accounts has doubled in the last 5 years.
Wow. And
so, you know, it has some attractive features. You get to take the entire value of that deduction in year 1. So if I make, you know, let's say I have a liquidity moment. So I sell a business or I inherit money from a long lost relative that was kind of unplanned, and I feel like, well, I should do something, I should give back because, you know, I just got lucky. So I want to make a permanent philanthropic commitment, but I'm not sure of where, when, who, what, why, and exactly how much I'm going to give to each individual charity. But I know I want to make $1 million commitment, or I know I want to make a $100 million commitment. So I can create a private family foundation, or at a lower transactions cost, I can put money into a DAF, and then I can pass it through that same year, or I can take my time and do it over time. And so I think that's one of the reasons it's become so popular, or some of the reasons it's become so popular. From a fundraising perspective, I get that it's more difficult because unless a donor says to you, hey, I've got money at the community foundation or at a national DAF account, I wouldn't necessarily know that. And even if they make a gift, and if they keep that gift anonymous, I may not know that in the kind of public domain. And so, you know, you depend more on direct donor information and or intel that you get from other board members or other charities and so on about how that's operating and so on. But it is harder.
So on the one hand, it's very expedient for a donor to create one of these donor advised funds as opposed to creating a family foundation. They can make that initial contribution, then give more time to think about what other charities to fund out of that fund. We also know that those who are going into the private sector are saying, hey, you're managing all my wealth and helping me think about my estate and my taxes and my family and everything. Hey, while I'm here, let's talk about my philanthropy as well. And then, as you said, there's this anonymity that, you know, the normal community foundation has program officers who meet with fundraisers and in the back of their mind are thinking some potential connections between those DAFs and the fundraisers. That's not happening in the private sector. So we see why this can be a benefit to some donors and why it can be a challenge for some fundraisers.
Right. Absolutely.
And so what advice do we have moving forward? And you know, at the Fundraising School, we talk about the importance of those personal relationships with donors. Patrick, that seems to be heightened even more here, that we have to know as we're talking with donors or people who know them that they have these private wealth management accounts as donor advised funds.
Yeah. You know, I think from a fundraising perspective, my proclivity is to say, I really don't care what account it comes from. if it comes from your personal checking account, your family foundation, or a DAF account, that's okay. And the trick is, I have donors, that I'm soliciting already or cultivating already, and I continue to do that. And I am entirely flexible as to how you want to make that gift. If you're relying on the existence of the knowledge of that DAF, that's when it's more problematic. And so I think the kind of traditional donor research, whether it's by what's known publicly about business transactions or through kind of that snowball interviewing effect and so on, or if it's through past gifts. If a donor has given me gifts in the past, and whether it's from a DAF or otherwise, if they tell me, then I know. The tricky part is they may be giving me a large gift or a decent sized gift out of a DAF, and I can't cultivate them, I can't steward that gift adequately because I don't know to whom to address it.
This really shows, again, the importance of relationships, and as you're doing your donor research, doing the best you can, often from people who maybe know these donors, that they're doing their charitable giving through a donor advised fund, especially now more and more in the private sector. Patrick, one of the issues that comes up with this and maybe creates some of the negative connotation amongst fundraisers is the lack of a payout requirement. It's very interesting. Our high net worth donor study that you have led and been a part of for so many years shows that our high net worth donors, interestingly, only about 3% of them are giving out of these commercial DAFs so far. That's a number we're keeping an eye on. And yet the donations into these DAFs, as you said, have increased significantly just in the last 5 to 10 years, which creates the suspicion that since there's not a payout requirement, that these funds are just being used as a parking lot and maybe just for the initial tax benefit. That's something fundraisers need to be aware of as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Bill. And I understand and respect the concern about that. And, as a naturally inquisitive person, investigated this a little bit. And so one of the things you have to say is that the amount going in has doubled over the last 5 years. The amount going out has also doubled.
Okay.
So there's some parallelisms there. I think regardless of the measurement, and there's several different ways one can measure the payout rate, all the different payout rates for the last several years have exceeded 20% of the asset base per year. Now, there's critics of that, right? Because transactionally, I can move money from a Fidelity or a Vanguard to the local community foundation. That counts as part of the payout rate for that Fidelity or Vanguard account. And then when it pays out of the local community foundation, that counts again for that community foundation as part of that payout for that local community foundation. I want to dissect the fact that for Giving USA, we do not double count those transactions. It's just counted once, but that's a technicality. From the payout rate perspective, that is a concern, and I don't see how you get to that being such a concern that you say mathematically that explains away most of that 20% plus payout. If you compare that other structural foundation approach, so you create a private family foundation and you're required by law to pay out 5%, well, that 5% payout minimum has also become an effective maximum.
Right.
So empirically, virtually all foundations pay out between 5 and 6%.
So it's an important subject, but be careful what you wish for. It might just become a ceiling. And as you said, right now we're seeing actually double-digit giving out of these funds. A question we get all the time at the fundraising school, so the individual or the household donating unit, they create one of these donor-advised funds. There's not a payout requirement, and then the donor or both donors pass away. What happens to that money next?
Yeah. So at that point then, it's turned over into a general trustees account, typically, unless there's a specific will that has, so like a child becomes the donor of record at that point. But generally, it would turn over into a general fund, and then the board of directors, the staff operating on behalf of the board of directors for that agency would then be responsible for giving that money out. One other thing on the payout rates. So I looked into this a little bit. Silicon Valley Community Foundation, Fidelity, Schwab, Vanguard, most of the big ones have a requirement that if an account is inactive in 2 to 4 years, that they notify the donor and they say, let's get on this. And if they remain inactive, then they divert those funds into the general pot of that organization and they start giving it away.
So there's an awareness here about trying to get those dollars out to other nonprofits. And so, as you know, you always need to research your prospective donors. You always need to have a close relationship with your donors. That's true across the board, but especially those donors who have these so-called commercial donor advised funds. Patrick's research and the research of the rest of our colleagues is available on our website at philanthropy.iupui.edu. And that's where you're going to find more information about the fundraising school. We have public courses offered all over the United States, custom training offered all over the world, quarterly webinars, other ways that you can strengthen your fundraising skills. I'm Bill Stanczykiewicz, and you are better informed on this first day from the fundraising school.